Plates clattered in the sink, and steam from the pot of borscht fogged up the tiny kitchen, condensing in droplets on the old Frigidaire range hood. Zoe sighed, wiping her fogged glasses with the edge of her apron. It had been a tough day. The accounting department had dumped extra reports on her again. Her boss had sent the quarterly balance back for revisions twice, and during lunch, Stacy's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Evans, had called asking her to come to the parent-teacher conference on Thursday. When will I ever get a break? The woman thought, stirring the borscht. For Nicholas, it absolutely had to be served with sour cream and garlic pampushki bread. Otherwise he'd start grumbling again about how his mother used to cook it tastier. The timer on the old microwave dinged. That meant the casserole for Stacy was ready. Her daughter had recently decided to become a vegetarian after reading about healthy eating on the internet. So now, Zoe had to cook separately for each family member. The front door slammed so hard the crystal chandelier in the hallway shuddered. A housewarming gift from her mother-in-law, which Zoe had been unsuccessfully trying to get rid of for 8 years. Zoe, dear. Her husband's voice sounded unnaturally cheerful. That tone Nicholas usually used when he was about to deliver bad news or ask for money before payday for another urgent garage purchase. I'm in the kitchen, Zoe responded, turning off the burner and taking off her apron. Nicholas appeared in the doorway, holding a bag with a cake from the nearby supermarket. His face showed a mix of excitement and poorly concealed cunning. Are we celebrating? Zoe asked in surprise, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. You could say that. Nicholas put the cake on the table and hugged his wife around the shoulders. I have news, Zoe dear. Zoe felt everything inside her clench. Over 15 years of marriage, she'd learned to recognize these news. Mom called today, Nicholas began, sitting down on a stool. She's in really bad shape. After the stroke, the doctors said she needs constant care. I'm sorry, Zoe replied cautiously. Maybe we should hire a home health aide. Mrs. Carter from the second floor has a good woman taking care of her father-in-law. What aide? Nicholas grimaced. Do you know how much that costs? 5,000 per shift. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? But your mom has a decent pension, and she must have savings. Zoe dear, my mother needs lifelong care. Nicholas interrupted her and suddenly flashed a broad smile. I'm bringing her here today, and I'll stay at her apartment. The kitchen, which had felt sweltering hot from the stove just a minute ago, suddenly turned as cold as the freezer in their old Frigidaire refrigerator. What do you mean bringing her here? Zoe felt her hands start to tremble. Exactly that. We'll free up Stacy's room. The corner in the living room will be enough for her. Mom needs her own room. We'll put the TV in there, too. She loves watching her shows. The In-Laws is on now, a new season. And Stacy? She's 14, she's at that age. She needs her own space. Don't make things up. Nicholas waved his hand dismissively. I lived in a dorm with 3 guys in one room, and I turned out fine. You lived with peers, not with... Zoe stopped, searching for words. Not with whom? Nicholas narrowed his eyes. With my mother. Is that it? Your mother never liked me or Stacy, Zoe said quietly. She still calls her that girl, as if she weren't her own granddaughter. Here we go. Nicholas slammed his palm on the table. Digging up the past again. Mom's just strict, old school. She doesn't sugarcoat things for every kid like your grandma did. Zoe felt a lump rise in her throat. Grandma had raised her after her parents died. She gave her last penny so her granddaughter wouldn't want for anything. When Grandma got sick, Zoe cared for her until the very end, refusing to put her in a nursing home, even though the neighbors strongly advised it. And now Nicholas was throwing that in her face. "Nick," Zoe tried to speak calmly, "let's think this through. Maybe your sister could take Mom. Marina has a 3-bedroom apartment. Her kids are grown." "Marina works," Nicholas snapped back, "and you're home often enough. Besides, you have experience caring for bedridden patients." "Home often enough," echoed in Zoe's head. "I work from 8 to 6, then I cook, clean, help Stacy with her homework, and he thinks I'm lounging around at home. Marina works, but I apparently don't." Zoe's voice trembled. "Don't twist my words." Nicholas frowned. "You have a desk job, indoors. Marina's on her feet all day at her clinic. Plus, she needs to renovate her apartment. Her sons. Applying to college. Tutors. Fees." Zoe was silent, processing what she'd heard, so the decision had already been made without her consent, without discussion. She was just being presented with a fait accompli. Water dripped quietly from the leaky faucet in the corner of the kitchen. Nicholas had promised to fix it a week ago, but never got around to it. "When do you plan to bring her?" Zoe asked, feeling anger mixed with despair boiling inside her. "Tomorrow morning," Nicholas replied cheerfully. "So tonight help Stacy sort her things to the attic or the garage. We'll move her desk to the living room, the computer too, and we can buy a fold-out bed." "A fold-out bed?" Zoe swallowed the tears rising to her eyes. For her own daughter. A fold-out bed. "What about her studies? She has art school, prep for architecture college." "She'll survive," Nicholas cut her off. "Enough wasting money on those classes. Better she sits with Grandma, helps care for her. That's more important than any doodling." At that moment, the sound of a door opening came from the apartment, and a minute later, Stacy appeared in the kitchen. A skinny girl with chestnut hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She held a large portfolio of drawings. "Hi," she muttered, casting a suspicious glance at her father with the cake and her mother frozen by the stove. "Stace," Zoe began in a trembling voice. "Dad has something to tell you." That night, Zoe couldn't sleep. She lay on the very edge of the marital bed, trying not to touch Nicholas, who was peacefully snoring, turned away from her. Rustling sounds came from behind the wall. Stacy wasn't sleeping either. After the family council that felt more like a court-martial, the girl had locked herself in her room and refused dinner. The cake remained untouched on the kitchen table. Zoe replayed the events of the evening in her head. How Nicholas had peremptorily announced to his daughter about Grandma moving in. How dryly he'd said she needed to sort her things tomorrow. How Stacy had first turned pale, then flushed, and then yelled, "Screw all of you, come here," before running to her room and slamming the door. Any other time Nicholas would have been furious at such insolence, but today he only smirked contentedly. She'll get over it. Nowhere else to go. In the darkness of the bedroom, Zoe saw clearly how their family life was crumbling. 15 years of marriage. And what? Her opinion meant nothing. Her wishes, like her daughter's, were disregarded. Eleanor Victoria, Nicholas's mother, had always disliked Zoe. From the start, she believed her son had married badly, tried to sabotage the wedding, convincing Nicholas that Zoe was after his engineer's salary. Then came the endless nitpicking. Zoe cooked wrong, washed clothes wrong, raised Stacy wrong. When Stacy was born, Eleanor Victoria hadn't come to the hospital. She sent a short note, congratulations on the new addition, and didn't even ask if it was a boy or a girl. and when she found out it was a granddaughter, she just frowned and said, "Well, tough luck, a man needs an heir." Since then, she'd never wished Stacy a happy birthday, never given her a gift. "It's a girl. It's yours." That's all she ever called her. 4 years ago, when Nicholas's older sister Marina convinced their mother to swap apartments, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Eleanor Victoria gave her 3-room apartment to her daughter and moved into Marina's 1-bedroom. "It'll be more convenient," Marina had said. "It's hard for Mum to clean a big apartment." Of course, it wasn't about cleaning. Marina's son, Tony, needed to prepare for college entrance exams, tutors, courses. A 1-bedroom apartment was too small for that life. Zoe had been surprised back then why her mother-in-law agreed so easily, but Nicholas had just waved it off. Mom always loved Marina more, does whatever she asks. Now, everything fell into place. Apparently there had been a deal. If necessary, Marina would take Mom in. And now Eleanor Victoria had had a stroke. Her left side was paralyzed, she couldn't walk on her own, spoke with difficulty, needed constant care. And somehow, all the responsibility had fallen on Zoe's shoulders. The clock in the hallway struck 3 in the morning. Headlights from a passing car flashed outside the window, momentarily illuminating the bedroom ceiling with a yellowish spot. Spring freshness wafted in through the slightly open window. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Zoe carefully slipped out from under the blanket and tiptoed out of the bedroom, walked down the hallway and stopped at Stacy's door. She knocked softly. "Stace, are you awake?" she whispered. The door opened a crack. Stacy stood there in pajamas with cartoon cats, a gift from her friend Polly for her last birthday. Her daughter's eyes were red and swollen. "Come in." Stacy stepped aside, letting her mother in. The room was small but cozy. Floral wallpaper with a small pattern, which they had chosen together 3 years ago. Bookshelves crammed with textbooks and art albums. Above the desk hung a reproduction of Ivazovsky's The Ninth Wave. Next to it, a faded photo of great-grandma Clara Stevens, who had raised Zoe. "How are you?" Zoe asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Fine." Stacy shrugged. "Packing my things." Only now did Zoe notice the open suitcase on the floor and a stack of neatly folded clothes. "What are you doing?" "What do you suggest?" Bitterness, unusual for her, sounded in her daughter's voice. "Wait until they kick me out to a fold-out bed in the living room." "Stacy, we'll figure something out." Zoe hugged her daughter around the shoulders. "I won't allow it." "What can you do?" Stacy interrupted. "Dad's already decided, like always, and didn't even ask you? Why do you always give in to him?" Zoe flinched. There was truth in her daughter's words. Nicholas often made decisions unilaterally, without consulting his wife. Where to go on vacation, what car to buy, how to renovate the apartment. Little things Zoe hadn't paid attention to before, to keep the peace in the family, but now it was about her daughter's well-being. "I won't give in," Zoe said firmly. "Not this time." "Really?" Stacy looked at her doubtfully. "Really?" Zoe smiled encouragingly and took her daughter's hand. "Now let's talk seriously." They talked until dawn, discussing all possible options, weighing the pros and cons. Stacy, despite her age, reasoned sensibly and maturely. She understood Grandma needed help, but didn't think it was fair that she had to sacrifice her space and her future. "Mum, she hates me," Stacy whispered when it started getting light outside. "Remember last year when we visited her for May Day, she kept telling Aunt Marina, 'Look how plain she is. Takes after her father, poor thing.' Zoe remembered. Eleanor Victoria had indeed said that, thinking Stacy couldn't hear, and then added something about not real blood, as if Stacy weren't her real granddaughter. Nicholas had just laughed then. Mom was joking, but jokes like that cut to the heart. Grandma Clara would never say that, Stacy continued. She always said, I was beautiful. You are beautiful, Zoe stroked her daughter's hair. And smart, and talented. And I won't let anyone hurt you. When it was fully light outside, Zoe returned to the bedroom. Nicholas was still asleep. She quietly packed the most necessary things into a small bag. Then she went back to Stacy, who had dozed off fully dressed on top of her bed. Wake up! She touched her shoulder gently. It's time to go. They left the apartment while the yard was still quiet. Only the cleaning lady, Aunt Val, was sweeping the asphalt, her broom made of twigs rustling. Zoe dear, where are you off to so early? She called out. To a friend's, Aunt Val, Zoe replied. Tell Nicholas, if he asks, that we've gone to Amanda Miller's. Had a fight, did you? The cleaning lady asked sympathetically. Something like that, Zoe nodded. Please tell him. The wind ruffled their hair. The sun hadn't yet warmed the morning air. Zoe held her daughter's hand tightly, and only one thought pounded in her head. We'll manage. We definitely will. Amanda Miller, a school literature teacher and Zoe's longtime friend, lived in the next neighborhood in a standard prefab 9-story building from the 80s. Metro, 2 bus stops, and soon they were standing in front of a worn door on the 4th floor. Sveta, sorry for the early visit, Zoe smiled apologetically when the sleepy homeowner opened the door. Amanda Miller threw up her hands, seeing the guests with bags. Goodness, Zoe dear, what happened? Stacy, honey, you look so pale. Come in quick. The small 1-bedroom apartment smelled of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon. Svetlana had already made breakfast, oatmeal with apples. She was always an early bird, even though her first school lessons didn't start until 8:30. Tell me, she demanded, seating her guests at the table and pouring coffee into cups. She poured Stacy hot cocoa with marshmallows. She knew the girl loved sweets. Zoe began to explain the situation incoherently, but then gathered her thoughts and recounted everything in order: the mother-in-law's stroke, Nicholas's decision, and the late-night conversation with Stacy. The bastard! Svetlana burst out, listening to her friend. Sorry, Stacy, for talking like that about your father, but how could he? It's okay, Stacy shrugged. I think the same about him. No, honey, it's not okay, Zoe objected softly. He is your father after all, and he has his own ideas about duty to parents. And duty to his daughter? Svetlana flared up. Doesn't that count? Zoe was silent. Indeed, why did Nicholas feel obligated to care for his mother, or rather, push the care onto his wife, while neglecting his own child's interests? What will you do now? Svetlana asked, adding another spoonful of cocoa to Stacy's cup. I don't know, Zoe admitted honestly. We'll stay with you for now if you don't mind, and then I'll figure something out. Of course, stay as long as you need, Svetlana assured her. It's cramped here, of course, but we'll manage somehow, especially since I'm at work all day and after school I have tutoring. Thank you, Sveta. Zoe gratefully squeezed her friend's hand. I understand everything. Mortgage, repairs, new furniture needed. I don't want to be a burden. Stop it, Svetlana waved her hand. I paid off the mortgage 3 years ago. Furniture. Forget the furniture. I have a fold-out sofa. Stacy can sleep there. You can bunk with me in the bedroom? Stacy listened to the adults' conversation in silence. mechanically stirring her cocoa with a spoon. Unspilled tears stood in her eyes. "What about school?" she suddenly asked. "An art school." "I have an important portfolio review the day after tomorrow." "You'll go to school as usual," Zoe replied. "Art school too. Nothing will change except we're homeless." Stacy gave a bitter laugh. "Not homeless, just temporarily relocated," Svetlana corrected her. "And besides, Stace, consider it an adventure." After breakfast, Svetlana went to work, leaving the keys for her guests. Zoe called her accounting department and took a personal day for family reasons. Her boss, Eva Johnson, a strict but understanding woman, didn't ask no unnecessary questions. "Sort out your problems, Zoe," she said, "but be here sharp on Monday." Zoe's phone started ringing off the hook around 10 in the morning. Nicholas. She didn't pick up. Then came messages. "Where are you, Zoe?" "Answer. What kind of stunt is this?" The last message was threatening. "If you don't pick up, I'll file a police report for missing wife and daughter." Zoe sighed and finally answered the call. "Hello?" Nicholas's voice sounded unusually lost. "Zoe, where are you?" "In a safe place," she replied calmly. "What do you mean, safe place? What kind of joke is this? I brought Mom here, got the apartment ready, and you're gone." "We discussed this yesterday, Nick." Zoe tried to speak evenly, not betraying her anxiety. "I don't agree with your decision." "My decision?" Nicholas exploded. "It's not my decision, it's a necessity. Mom had a stroke, she needs care." "And I proposed alternatives," Zoe reminded him. "A home health aide, a social worker. Finally, your sister could take Mom." "Marina works," Nicholas cut her off, "and she has her own problems." "And I don't have any problems, is that it?" Zoe felt herself boiling over. "I work too, by the way. I have a daughter who needs attention and care. She has art school. College applications are coming up." "Enough with that art school," Nicholas roared. "She watched some stupid shows about designers. That's why she's filling the kid's head with nonsense. She needs a normal profession, not to become some artist. Unemployment, poverty." Zoe shut her eyes, restraining her anger. How many times had they discussed this? Stacy had shown artistic talent since childhood, in design, painting. She had real talent, recognized by her teachers, but Nicholas considered it all nonsense and a waste of money on classes. "Nicholas," she said, carefully choosing her words, "I won't come home until you reconsider your decision about Mom." "What?" Her husband was stunned. "Are you giving me an ultimatum?" "I'm protecting our daughter's interests," Zoe replied firmly. "And my own, too, for that matter." "And who will protect my interests?" Nicholas asked venomously. "Or am I nobody in this family?" "You're the head of the family," Zoe sighed, "and you should think about all its members, not just your mom." "All right then," Nicholas's voice turned hard. "Either you come home by tonight or, well, don't say I didn't warn you." "What do you mean?" "You'll see." And Nicholas hung up. Zoe sank wearily onto the sofa. Stacy, sitting beside her and hearing the whole conversation, hugged her mother. "Mom, everything will be okay," she said with such adult certainty that Zoe's heart ached. "We'll manage." That evening Marina, Nicholas's sister, called. They rarely communicated. Zoe had never felt much warmth from her sister-in-law. Marina was a carbon copy of her mother, just as domineering with the same habit of always being right. "Zoe, have you lost your mind?" Marina began without greeting. "What kind of drama is this? Mom is lying there stressed out. Her blood pressure shot up to 180. "Hello, Marina," Zoe replied calmly. Nice to hear from you. Don't get smart, her sister-in-law snapped. Nick is on edge. Mom's hysterical. Do you realize what you've done? What exactly have I done? Zoe inquired. I refuse to sacrifice my daughter's well-being for your mother's whim. Whim? Marina's voice rose an octave. A person after a stroke, paralyzed, helpless, and so you had to deprive my 14-year-old daughter of her personal space, put her on a fold-out bed in the living room, forbid her from doing what she loves. Oh, that's what this is about, Marina exclaimed triumphantly. So Stacy's room is more important than your mother-in-law's life. Stacy, Zoe repeated, feeling everything inside her boil over. What did you just call my daughter? That? A pause hung on the other end of the line. I didn't mean that, Marina finally said less confidently. Yes, you did, Zoe cut her off. Like mother, like daughter. You treat my child the same way. Now listen to me carefully, dear sister-in-law. Your mother has you, her beloved daughter, her support and hope. You have a 3-bedroom apartment which your mother gave you. You have only one son, and he's an adult. So why don't you take Mom in? I have work, Marina protested. I'm on my feet all day. And I don't have work? Zoe couldn't hold back and raised her voice. Do you think I lounge around at home? You have a desk job indoors. Marina parroted Nicholas's words from the morning. Clearly they'd already discussed all the arguments. You know what, Marina? Zoe took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Let's be honest. You don't want to take Mom in not because of your work, but because you're renting out her apartment and getting a nice income. And if Mom moves in with you, you'll have to give up that money. Am I right? Silence again on the phone. Well, look who's talking, Marina finally sneered. Mum was right. You were always mercenary. Me? Zoe even laughed at the absurdity of the accusation. Me, mercenary? Wasn't it you who swapped Mom's 3-roomer for a 1-bedroom for convenience? Wasn't it you who rents out her apartment to pay for your Dimka's tutors? Who's mercenary here, Marina dear? Marina slammed down the phone. Zoe leaned back tiredly on the sofa backrest. Stacy sat beside her, tightly gripping her sketchbook, her way of calming down. They won't leave us alone, will they? The girl asked quietly. They won't, Zoe confirmed, but we won't give up either. At that moment the phone rang again. Nicholas's name flashed on the screen. Zoe declined the call. A minute later, a message arrived. I'm filing for divorce, and don't think you'll get the apartment. It's mortgaged and you can't afford the payments. Zoe silently showed the message to her daughter. Mum, Stacy swallowed, how will we live? Where? Don't worry, Zoe hugged her daughter. We'll figure something out. The main thing is that you keep studying and developing your talent. A spring evening peered through the window. In Amanda Miller's kitchen, the old Frigidaire refrigerator hummed, which the hostess jokingly called a contemporary of perestroika. Children's laughter came from the street. Local kids were kicking a ball around the yard. Life went on, despite everything. You know, Mom, Stacy suddenly said, I think Dad's bluffing. He won't file for divorce. Why do you think that? Zoe asked. Because he's too used to you doing everything, cooking, cleaning, laundry, paying the utilities, keeping track of the mortgage deadlines. Without you, he's lost. Zoe flinched, hearing from her daughter what she herself had thought many times. Indeed, Nicholas was completely helpless with everyday life. He could fix a faucet or hang a shelf, but budgeting, cooking, keeping things clean, that was all on her. Maybe you're right, Zoe said thoughtfully, but right now it's not important. The main thing is to defend your right to a normal life and studies. They sat on the sofa for a long time, hugging, making plans for the future. Plans that had no place for Nicholas, his mother, or his sister. Plans where they were free and happy. A week passed. Zoe returned to work, Stacy to school. Life gradually settled into a new rhythm. Although at times both felt like everything happening was just a bad dream they would wake up from any moment. Her friends in accounting, of course, noticed the changes in Zoe, her gaunt face, dull eyes, automatic movements, but didn't dare ask questions. Only Rachel Foster, a woman of retirement age who stayed on at work to have something to do in her old age, ventured to approach her during lunch break. "Zoe, dear," she sat down nearby, rustling the wrapper of her yogurt. "Is everything all right?" Zoe forced a smile. "Perfectly, Rachel Foster. Just tired." "And how's your husband?" the old woman squinted. "Haven't quarreled, have you?" "What makes you think that?" Zoe almost choked on her tea. "Haven't worn your wedding ring for a week," Rachel Foster nodded at Zoe's bare hand. "I'm observant." Indeed. Zoe had taken off the ring the very day she and Stacy left home. She couldn't bear to look at the symbol of a marriage cracking at the seams. "We're temporarily separated," she admitted, realizing there was no point hiding the obvious. "Stacy's with me." "Because of the mother-in-law?" Rachel Foster asked bluntly. Zoe stared at her colleague in amazement. "How did you know, dear?" The old woman smiled warmly. "I've been through 3 marriages, and 2 ended precisely because of mothers-in-law. It's a classic story, right down to the last note." Zoe couldn't hold back and told her everything. The mother-in-law's stroke, her husband's demand to give up their daughter's room, his sister profiting from their mother's apartment. "And what now?" Rachel Foster asked, having heard the story. "I don't know," Zoe admitted honestly. "Nick threatens to file for divorce, but so far it's just threats. He calls every day, demands we come back. Yesterday he came to the school, tried to talk to Stacy, but she ran away." "And you yourself? Do you want a divorce?" Zoe thought. Did she want a divorce? Even 2 weeks ago, she would have resolutely said no. But now, "I don't know," she repeated. "I'm afraid of being left without a roof over my head. The apartment is mortgaged. I can't afford the payments alone." "Yes," Rachel Foster drawled. "A situation and work?" "Hanging on for now," Zoe sighed. "Eva Johnson is understanding, but this can't go on forever. I've already made 2 mistakes in calculations. Good thing Olivia checked before sending off the declarations." "Hold on, girl." Rachel Foster patted her hand. "Everything will work out." After work, Zoe stopped by the art school. Stacy had an important portfolio review before submitting her applications to the architecture college. Her teacher, Roland Evans, a young but already well-known artist in the city, showed her around the student exhibition. "Your daughter has undeniable talent," he said, stopping by a watercolor landscape Stacy had done. "Such a sense of color, such composition, rare at her age." Zoe looked at her daughter's work with pride. Landscapes, still lifes, several portraits of classmates, everywhere a special style, a unique perspective. "Do you think she has a chance of getting in?" Zoe asked. "Absolutely," Roland nodded. "I've already contacted the college admissions board," he told them about Stacy. "They're willing to consider her portfolio out of turn." Out of turn? Zoe was surprised. Why? "Because such natural talent is rare," the teacher smiled. "And it's not just my opinion. Look," he handed Zoe a booklet for an international children's drawing competition. Stacy's work was on the cover, that very landscape with 2 birches by the river that she had painted last summer at Grandma Clara's dacha. 3rd place at the international level, Roland said proudly. We submitted the work without Stacy knowing, wanted it to be a surprise. Zoe felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her girl, her talented girl, and Nicholas had wanted to erase all this, force Stacy to give up her dream, her future. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything. That evening, when she and Stacy returned to Amanda Miller's apartment, a surprise awaited them. A note from the hostess lay on the table. Girls, I'm at Mr. Alfred's. Be back late. Dinner in the fridge. And Zoe, someone called from some number several times. I didn't pick up. Wonder who that could be, Zoe muttered, reheating dinner. The answer wasn't long in coming. The doorbell rang around 8 in the evening. Zoe looked through the peephole and saw Marina, Nicholas's sister. Open up. I know you're home, she yelled, pressing the bell insistently. Zoe sighed and opened the door. Hello, Marina, she said calmly. To what do I owe the visit? As if you don't know? Marina pushed past her into the hallway. Where's my mother? What have you done with her? What? Zoe was stunned. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Marina pulled off her boots and marched into the kitchen, where a frightened Stacy sat at the table. Mum is missing. Nick went to see her yesterday and the apartment's empty. Her things are there, but she's gone. And you decided I took her. Zoe even laughed at the absurdity of the accusation. Why would I want your mother? I ran away from her, remember? Not Julie. Marina plopped onto a chair. I know everything. You and Nick conspired to scare me. Marina, Zoe began losing patience. I haven't seen your mother since last year and have no idea where she is. Liar! Marina slammed her palm on the table. You and Nick are constantly calling each other. What? Zoe couldn't believe her ears. I haven't spoken to him in 3 days. He calls. I don't pick up. Yeah, right, Marina drawled sarcastically. What about his visit here yesterday? Charlotte told me everything. Zoe froze. Svetlana hadn't said anything about Nicholas visiting, and couldn't have. She would have warned her. Svetlana, Zoe repeated. My friend Svetlana. Not that Sveta, her neighbor, Marina waved her hand. She saw Nick coming out of here yesterday afternoon. We weren't home all day yesterday, Stacy intervened. Mum and I went to the college to submit my application. Quiet when adults are talking, Marina barked and Stacy flinched. Don't you dare yell at my daughter. Zoe stood between Marina and Stacy. And get out of here. I don't know where your mother is and I don't want to know. Oh, you, Marina choked with rage. I'll show you. Show me what? Zoe crossed her arms. Hit me? File a police report? Go ahead, file. They'll figure out who's right and who's wrong. Marina was breathing heavily, drilling Zoe with a hateful look, then suddenly sagged and sank onto the chair. Zoe, her voice trembled. I don't know what to do. Nick's not answering his phone. Mum's disappeared. The apartment's empty. I'm scared. Stop, Zoe frowned. When was the last time you talked to your brother? 3 days ago, Marina sniffled. He said he was going to see Mom, then would stop by your place and then disappeared. My place? Zoe looked at Stacy in surprise, but she just shrugged. He didn't come, and he hasn't called in 3 days. You're right. He used to call 10 times a day, now silence. Exactly. Marina started rocking on the chair. And Mom's gone. I'm afraid he did something to himself and to her. out of despair. You left him. Don't talk nonsense. Zoe felt herself going cold inside. Nicholas wasn't the type to... She didn't finish the thought. No, Nick wouldn't harm himself. He was just upset, confused. He needed time to collect his thoughts. The lock jingled in the hallway. Amanda Miller had returned. "Oh, we have guests!" she exclaimed, peeking into the kitchen. "Hello, hello," Marina replied gloomily. "You're the owner?" "The very one," Svetlana extended her hand. "Amanda Miller." "Marina, Nicholas's sister," Zoe introduced the guest. "She has problems, can't find her brother or mother." "Oh dear," Svetlana sat on the edge of a chair. "What happened?" Marina repeated her story. Svetlana frowned. "Strange, and you called the hospitals?" "I did," Marina nodded. "Not there." "And the police?" Zoe asked. "Not yet." Marina lowered her eyes. "I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" Svetlana didn't understand. "Nick threatened to sue me for Mum's apartment," Marina reluctantly admitted. "Said he has documents proving I took Mum's money, 600,000. "And did you take it?" Zoe asked directly. "I didn't take it, I borrowed it," Marina snapped back. "For Dimka's education, teaching college, dorm, books, it all costs money." "Wow," Svetlana whistled. 600,000. How many months did you rent out the apartment to save that up?" "1.5 years," Marina grumbled. "But I'll pay it back. Once Tony graduates, starts working." "So you took all your mother-in-law's savings and rented out her apartment," Zoe summed up, "and you're afraid to go to the police because it will all come out." "Yes, nothing to come out." Marina raised her voice again. "I have an IOU. It's all legal." "Then what are you afraid of?" Svetlana asked. "Go and report your mother and brother missing." Marina was silent, nervously fiddling with the edge of her blouse. "All right," Zoe finally decided. "I'll call the police myself. Nicholas is my husband after all. I should report it." She took out her phone and started dialing the number. Marina suddenly jumped up and snatched the mobile from her. "Don't!" she shouted. "I'll tell you everything." "Tell me what?" Zoe was on guard. "Mom's in the hospital," Marina blurted out. "In intensive care. She had a second stroke when Nick told her you'd left him. I didn't want to tell you so you'd feel guilty." "What?" Zoe couldn't believe her ears. "Have you completely lost your conscience, manipulating something like that?" "No, it's true." Marina held out her hands. "I swear. She's in County General Hospital. You can call and check." "And I will." Zoe snatched her phone back. "Right now." She quickly found the hospital's number online and called. After a few rings, a tired female voice answered. "Admissions, County General. How can I help you?" "Hello," Zoe tried to speak calmly. "Could you tell me if a patient, Eleanor Victoria Sokoloff, is there? Admitted possibly a few days ago with a stroke." "One moment," the nurse replied. The sound of keyboard clicks followed. "Yes, we have such a patient. And you are?" "Daughter-in-law," Zoe replied, looking Marina straight in the eyes. "You'll need to come to admissions, with ID." The nurse informed her. "The patient's condition is critically stable, visiting only with the attending physician's permission." "Thank you." Zoe ended the call. "Well, your mother really is in the hospital and Nick." "I don't know." Marina lowered her eyes. "Truly, I don't. I thought he'd contacted you." "Wait," Svetlana intervened. "Who brought Eleanor Victoria to the hospital?" "Nick, of course," Marina answered. "The doctor said some man brought her by taxi, left her documents and left. Haven't seen him since." And you kept silent all these days. Zoe couldn't find words for her outrage, didn't even call me, didn't tell me my mother-in-law was in intensive care. My husband missing. Why should I? Marina snapped. You renounced us, abandoned the family. I didn't abandon anyone, Zoe replied wearily. I was protecting my daughter from unfair demands all these days. Mom, Stacy said quietly, having silently listened to the adults. Dad was probably looking for us, wanted to tell us about Grandma. Zoe felt a pang of guilt. What if Stacy was right? What if Nicholas really had been looking for them to tell them what happened? But why hadn't he called? Why hadn't he left a message? We need to find Nick, Zoe said decisively. Marina, did you check his apartment, the garage? The apartment, yes. Empty, Marina answered. Didn't think about the garage. I know where the garage is, Zoe stood up. We'll go there right now. I'm coming with you. Stacy immediately stood up. No, sweetheart, Zoe stroked her daughter's head. Stay with Amanda Miller. Aunt Marina and I will be quick. They called a taxi, and 20 minutes later they were at the garage cooperative on the outskirts of the city. The guard, Uncle Al, who knew Zoe well, let them through without question. Haven't seen you in a while, Zoe dear, he said, raising the barrier. Nick came by yesterday, looking gloomy, sat in his garage for about 2 hours and left. Yesterday, Zoe repeated. Are you sure? Yep, Uncle Al nodded. I even thought, what's got him so down? Had a fight? Yeah, a little, Zoe answered evasively. Did he leave a key with you? Nope, Uncle Al shook his head. I only have keys for 5 garages, and that's for emergencies. Nicholas's garage was locked. Zoe knew where he usually hid the spare key, under an old tire in the corner. Finding it, she opened the lock. The garage was clean and tidy. Nicholas always kept order in his den, as he called it. His old Lada Priora stood in its place, tools neatly hung on the walls. On the workbench, a half-empty beer bottle and an open newspaper. Strange, Zoe murmured. The car's here, but Nick isn't. She looked around. Her gaze fell on a small table in the corner where Nicholas usually laid out his blueprints and diagrams. He did appliance repairs on the side. On the table lay an envelope addressed for Zoe. Her heart skipped a beat. Zoe took the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a sheet of paper covered in familiar handwriting. Zoe dear, if you're reading this, it means you came looking for me after all. Forgive me for everything. I was wrong. Mom is back in the hospital, this time for a long while. The doctors say her chances are slim. I understood everything, but too late. Take care of Stacy, and forgive me if you can. Nicholas. Good Lord, Zoe whispered, sinking onto an old chair. What had he planned? Marina snatched the letter from her and scanned it. The idiot, she cursed. This is a suicide note. Did he decide to… She didn't finish, but Zoe understood. Terrible thoughts raced through her head. Could Nick have… No, not that. We need to call the police, she said decisively. Immediately. The duty officer at the police station, a balding man in his 40s with tired eyes, listened for a long time to Zoe's disjointed story, mechanically tapping his pen on the desk. His gaze lingered on the wedding ring Zoe had put on before leaving the garage, then slid to Marina, pacing nervously back and forth in the office. So it's been less than 72 hours since the presumed disappearance, he clarified when Zoe finished. Yes, she nodded, but the note, it's clearly a suicide note. Not necessarily, the officer shrugged. Maybe he went somewhere to wait out a tough time, to friends, relatives. Nick has no close friends, Marina intervened. Relatives are just me and Mom, and we haven't seen him. Maybe he's at your place. The officer nodded at Zoe. Home. Came when no one was there and stayed after the fight. Zoe shook her head. Impossible. And the guard said he saw him at the garage yesterday evening. All right. The officer sighed and pulled a report form towards him. Fill this out, but understand, searches start only after 72 hours since the disappearance. That's procedure. Unless there are clear signs of foul play. Zoe took the pen and started filling out the form. Her hand shook, the letters came out uneven, jumping. Her head pounded, just let him be okay. However angry she was at her husband, the thought that he might have harmed himself was unbearable. Marina sat down next to her, nervously fiddling with her purse strap. It's my fault, she suddenly whispered. I pressured him, forced him to take Mum in. Said that otherwise, I'd sell both apartments and leave town with Dimka. What? Zoe looked up from the papers. You threatened to sell the apartments, but Mum's apartment isn't yours. Legally it is. Marina lowered her eyes. Mum transferred it to me 2 years ago, just in case. You understand. In case of death, Zoe specified, but then Nick should have gotten a share. She signed everything over to me, Marina admitted. Nick didn't know. And I promised to give him his share in cash when I sold it in the future. Zoe listened, not believing her ears. Here was the root of the problem. That's why Nicholas had insisted so much that his mother live with them. He was afraid of being left with nothing if something happened to her. And if she lived with you and died? Zoe struggled for words. Then the apartment would go to Nick as inheritance. No, Marina snapped irritably. I'm telling you, the apartment is already mine. It's just what? Just Mom set a condition, Marina completely deflated. I get the apartment officially only after her death, but she has lifetime occupancy rights, and if she doesn't live in her apartment but with her son, then her apartment effectively becomes yours, Zoe finished, and you can keep renting it out. I'm not a monster, Marina defended herself. I have a child too. Dimka's applying to college, needs money. You know how much education costs, and Sergei's salary doesn't go far. He's always broke. Zoe was silent, processing what she'd heard. It turned out that behind this whole story with the mother-in-law moving in was simple material interest. Marina wanted to keep the rental income. Nicholas was afraid of being left without an inheritance, and neither of them cared how it would affect Stacy. She finished filling out the form and handed it to the duty officer. Thank you. He skimmed the document. Don't forget your phone number so we can contact you if any information comes up. Zoe wrote down the number and stood up. When will you start the search? As I said, after 72 hours, the officer repeated. But if your husband shows up sooner, be sure to let us know. They stepped out of the police station into a damp spring evening. A fine drizzle was falling, fog rising from the asphalt. Zoe shivered and zipped up her jacket. What now? Marina asked, squinting from the raindrops on her face. I'm going home, Zoe said decisively, in case he really is there. With you? Marina pulled up her coat collar. No, I'll go alone. Zoe caught her look. If he's there, it might be easier for him to talk to me alone. And if not? If not? Zoe sighed. Then I'll go back to Svetlana's and we'll wait for news. Marina nodded. Call if anything, she requested, any time. They parted ways at the bus stop. Marina headed home. Zoe took a taxi to her house. The whole way, she couldn't shake anxious thoughts. What if Nicholas really had decided on the final step? What if she was too late and the tragedy had already happened? The taxi driver, an older man with grey temples, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You seem upset," he remarked. "Fight with your husband." "What?" Zoe flinched. "Why do you say that?" "Been married 40 years, the driver smiled wryly. "I know that look." "Definitely fought with the husband, and badly." Zoe didn't answer. She wasn't going to tell a stranger the whole story of their family drama. "It's nothing," the driver continued, not waiting for an answer. "You'll make up. Everyone makes up." "Not everyone," Zoe said quietly. Everyone, the driver insisted, "especially when there are kids. For the kids, people forgive anything." For the kids, Zoe thought, but Nick was ready to sacrifice their daughter's interests for his mother. The taxi stopped at a familiar entrance. Zoe paid and got out. "Good luck making up," the driver called after her. Climbing up to her floor felt strange, like returning to a past life that wasn't hers anymore. There was the old lady from the 5th floor walking her toy poodle. There was the teenager from the 3rd floor coming back from practice, dragging a sports bag. Everything was normal, as if that week of nightmare hadn't happened. The apartment door was locked with both locks. Zoe took out her keys and opened it. "Nick!" she called out, entering the hallway. "Are you home?" Silence. Only the drip of water from the kitchen faucet. That same faucet Nicholas had promised to fix a month ago. Zoe walked through the apartment, looking into every room. Empty. The bed in the bedroom was neatly made. The cleaning lady, who came once a week, must have tidied up. On the kitchen table, an unwashed coffee cup and a plate with dried egg remnants. In Stacy's room, which Nicholas had wanted to give to his mother, there were no signs of moving. Everything was in its place. The desk, the bed, the wardrobe. Only the violets on the windowsill had wilted. No one had watered them all week. Zoe went to the window and moved the curtain aside. Lanterns glowed in the yard, illuminating the playground where little Stacy had once played. Now it was empty. It was late. All the kids were home with their parents. "Where are you, Nick?" Zoe mentally asked, looking at the dark windows of the neighboring houses. The phone vibrated in her pocket. Zoe hurriedly took it out, hoping to see her husband's name on the screen. But it was Svetlana. "Hello, Zoe? Any luck? Found him?" "No, Sveta." Zoe sank heavily onto Stacy's bed. "Filed a report with the police, but they said searches start only after 72 hours. I'm home now checking, but he's not here." "Stacy's worried," Svetlana said. "Maybe you should come back?" "It's late." "Yeah, I'll finish up here and come," Zoe agreed. "Tell her everything will be fine." She ended the call and looked around once more. What had she hoped to find? Another note, some clue. Nicholas was never prone to dramatic gestures or secret messages. Just in case, Zoe checked the living room, looked under the sofa, inspected the storage shelves. Nothing unusual. The same books on the shelves, the same photos on the walls, the same furniture bought on installments 5 years ago. Utility bills lay on the coffee table. Soon it would be time to pay for the month. Zoe mechanically added up the sums. Almost 10,000 rubles plus 3,000 for internet and phone, plus 25,000, the monthly mortgage payment. Nicholas couldn't handle all this alone. Neither could she. "What am I thinking?" Zoe chided herself. "Right now, the main thing is to find Nick alive and well. We'll figure out the rest later." She was about to leave when her gaze fell on a photo on the shelf in the hallway. Their wedding. Young, happy. Nicholas unusually serious in a suit, she in a white dress with a bouquet of wildflowers. She'd wanted those, not the lush roses the florist offered. Zoe picked up the photo. 15 years ago, they had vowed to be together in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. And now, everything was falling apart because of what exactly? Because of the mother-in-law's apartment? Because of Stacy's room? Or because of the accumulated grievances, unspoken words, fatigue with each other over the years? Suddenly, Zoe noticed that the photo frame looked odd, as if it had been opened recently. She turned the picture over and saw that the back cover was, indeed, poorly secured. Prying it open with her nail, Zoe lifted it. Between the photo and the cardboard backing lay a sheet of paper folded in 4. Zoe unfolded it and gasped. It was Nicholas's voluntary resignation notice, dated a month ago. That's why he left every day as if going to work, flashed through Zoe's mind. He lost his job and didn't tell me. Now everything fell into place, and his persistent desire to have his mother move in. Saving on an aide and the possibility of renting out her apartment, and his increased interest in the fridge contents, and the strange economizing on small things, which Zoe had chalked up to typical male stinginess. Nicholas had been out of work for a month. Mortgage, utilities, plus Stacy's art school classes all lay heavy on the family budget. And then Marina with her threats to sell their mother's apartment. Zoe sat down on the hallway bench trying to gather her thoughts. Where could Nicholas have gone? To whom? He didn't have many friends, and almost all of them were mutual acquaintances. Suddenly it hit her. The dacha, the old cottage in the Pinecrest Garden community, inherited from his grandfather. They rarely went there. Too far from the city, no amenities. The plot was small. But Nick loved that place, said his soul rested there. Zoe grabbed her phone and dialed the number of the community chairman, Alan Davis. Good thing she still had his contact from last summer when they paid the fees. Hello, Alan Davis. Sorry for the late call. It's Zoe Sokoloff, plot 6. Ah, Zoe. The chairman's voice sounded sleepy. What's wrong? Roof leaking again? No, Zoe hastened to reassure him. I wanted to ask, have you seen my husband at the cottage in the last few days? Sokolov, the chairman repeated. Yeah, Nicholas came yesterday evening. I was surprised. Not the season. Said he wanted to do some ice fishing before it melts. Thank you, Zoe exhaled. Thank you so much. Don't mention it, Alan Davis sounded surprised. Want me to pass on a message? I'll be passing by tomorrow. No need, Zoe replied quickly. I'll come myself. The morning was foggy and damp. Zoe woke up early. Honestly, she'd barely slept, tossing and turning on the unfamiliar bed, replaying the events of the past days. Beside her, Stacy snored softly. She'd flatly refused to stay with Svetlana when she learned her mother was going to the dacha to look for her father. I'm coming with you, she'd declared in a tone that brooked no argument. He's my dad, and I have a right to know what's wrong with him. Svetlana didn't try to dissuade them, only packed a thermos of hot tea, sandwiches, and a first aid kit just in case. Zoe carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to wake her daughter. She went to the window and pulled back the curtain. Thick fog swirled outside, barely revealing the outlines of neighboring houses. It was as if the whole world had been blurred, leaving only vague contours. Like our life, Zoe thought. Everything blurred, uncertain. She quietly went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Svetlana was already awake. She sat at the table with a cup of coffee, hunched over a tablet. Good morning, Zoe whispered. And to you. Svetlana pushed a cookie jar towards her. Sleep? Okay? Not really. Zoe admitted honestly. Thought all night. About Nicholas? About him, about us, about everything. Zoe rubbed her eyes tiredly. You see, Sveta, I was angry with him for wanting to sacrifice Stacy's interests for his mother. And now I find out he's unemployed, that his sister was blackmailing him, that his mother is in intensive care. And what now? Svetlana looked at her friend intently. Will you forgive him? I don't know. Zoe stirred her spoon in her cup. First, we need to find him, make sure he's okay, and then decide what to do next. And what about Stacy? Svetlana lowered her voice. If you reconcile, she'll still have to give up her room for your mother-in-law. Or do you think Nicholas changed his mind? I don't know, Zoe repeated. Maybe now that Eleanor Victoria is in the hospital. Oh, I didn't tell Marina Nick might be at the dacha. She hurriedly took out her phone and dialed her sister-in-law's number. After a few rings, a sleepy voice answered, Hello, Zoe. What happened? Marina, sorry for the early call. Zoe spoke quietly, so as not to wake Stacy. I think I know where Nick is. At the dacha, in Pinecrest. The community chairman confirmed he saw him there yesterday. Thank God, Marina exhaled. I didn't sleep all night, worried sick, thought he might have, I was scared too, Zoe admitted, but it seems he just went away to think things over. Are you going to him? Marina asked. Yes, we're getting ready now with Stacy. With Stacy? Surprise sounded in Marina's voice. Are you sure that's a good idea? She insisted, Zoe explained, says she has a right to know about her father, and I agree with her. A pause hung on the other end. I see, Marina finally said. Listen, Zoe, I stopped by the hospital yesterday. Mum's conscious. Can talk, though with difficulty. That's good, Zoe replied cautiously, not understanding where this was going. She asked about Nick, Marina continued, and about you too. About me? Zoe was amazed. Her mother-in-law had never shown much interest in her life. Yes, said she wants to talk to you personally. To me? Zoe couldn't believe her ears. Why? Don't know, weariness sounded in Marina's voice. Maybe she feels she doesn't have long, wants to make peace before the end. Zoe was silent. Make peace? After 15 years of Cold War, it was hard to believe. I'll stop by to see her after the dacha, Zoe finally said. If I can. Okay, Marina replied. And Zoe, sorry about yesterday, about everything. Zoe didn't know what to say. This apology from the always so self-assured Marina was too unexpected. All right, was all she said. We'll talk later. By 6 a.m. they were ready to leave. Stacy, pale but determined, held a small backpack with her things. Maybe Dad will stay at the dacha, she explained to her surprised mother. He'll need a change of clothes, warm socks. Zoe just shook her head. Sometimes her daughter showed such adult practicality it was unsettling. Svetlana drove them to the bus station, from where a bus ran every 2 hours to the Pinecrest Garden community. The first bus was at 7. Call when you get there, Svetlana instructed as they hugged goodbye. And when you find Nicholas, call right away. Definitely, Zoe promised. Thank you for everything, Sveta. Oh, stop, Svetlana waved her off. What are friends for? The bus was almost empty. Not the season for summer residents. Only a couple of elderly women with bulky bags and a sullen man with fishing gear. Zoe and Stacy sat at the very back. The waking city drifted past the window. Shops were opening, street sweepers were cleaning the sidewalks, early passers-by were hurrying to work. Mom, Stacy asked quietly when the bus pulled onto the ring road, what will we say to Dad? I don't know, honey, Zoe answered honestly. I really don't. Will you forgive him? Stacy looked at her mother intently. Will you? Zoe answered the question with a question, Stacy thought, gazing out the window at the trees rushing by. Probably, she finally said, if he apologizes, and if he doesn't insist I give up my room for Grandma. Grandma's in the hospital, Zoe reminded her, and apparently for a long time. Still, Stacy said stubbornly, it's a matter of principle. He was willing to sacrifice my future for her. Life isn't always fair, sweetheart, Zoe sighed. Sometimes you have to choose the lesser of two evils. And Dad chose Grandma over me, Stacy remarked bitterly, even though she never loved him or me. It's not quite like that. Zoe put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Your dad just got confused. Aunt Marina threatened him. He lost his job, was afraid we'd be left without money. He could have told us. Stacy pressed close to her mother. We could have figured something out together. You're right, Zoe agreed. He should have talked to us, but men are often ashamed to admit their problems, afraid of seeming weak. The bus stopped at the turnoff to the garden community. No one else got off. The driver looked at the mother and daughter in surprise. You sure this is your stop? He asked. It's still a good 2 kilometers walk to the settlement. Sure, Zoe nodded. Thanks. They walked along the dirt road, sinking into the spring mud. Zoe regretted not wearing rubber boots. Her shoes were hopelessly ruined within 10 minutes. Look, Mom. Stacy pointed to car tire tracks imprinted in the soft clay. Someone drove through recently. Maybe the chairman, Zoe suggested, or fisherman. There's a lake nearby. But deep down, she hoped it was the track of Nicholas's car, meaning he really was here at the dacha, and soon they would see him. What would she say to him? How would she start the conversation? So many grievances, so much left unsaid had built up over these days, and over all the years of their marriage, to be honest. The Pinecrest community greeted them with silence and emptiness. Most cottages were closed up. The season hadn't started yet. Only smoke rose from the chimney of the guardhouse, and an elderly man was fiddling with a greenhouse on one plot. The Sokolovs' dacha, an old wooden house with peeling paint, stood at the very end of the settlement, at the edge of the woods. The small 6-acre plot had long been neglected. They'd last been here the previous summer and only for a week. As they approached the house, Zoe felt her heart beat faster. What if Nicholas wasn't there? Or worse, what if he was, but... She pushed away the terrible thoughts. No, Nick's not like that. He wouldn't harm himself. He's just upset, confused. He needs time to collect his thoughts. The gate was ajar. Nicholas's car, an old Lada with a dented bumper, stood in the yard. So he was here. Dad! Stacy broke into a run towards the house, outpacing her mother. Dad, are you here? Zoe followed, her legs feeling like lead. The door opened and Nicholas appeared on the threshold, unshaven, gaunt, in an old sweater with a stretched out neck. Seeing his daughter, he froze, not believing his eyes. Stacy! His voice trembled. Zoe! Dad! Stacy threw her arms around his neck. We were so worried. We thought... We were scared. Nicholas hugged his daughter tightly, holding her close. His shoulders shook. He was crying, unashamed of his tears. Zoe stood aside, not daring to come closer. Her heart ached with pain and tenderness at the sight. Despite everything, Nicholas loved Stacy, and she loved her father. Zoe! Nicholas looked up at her, his eyes red from crying. Forgive me, I'm such a fool. Let's go inside, was all she said. We need to talk. Inside it was warm. An old pot-belly stove was working, spreading the smell of burning wood through the room. A half-empty vodka bottle and an open can of stew stood on the table. A sleeping bag lay rolled up in the corner. Apparently, Nicholas had slept right on the floor, not bothering to unfold the old, saggy sofa. "Sit down," he fussed, clearing the table. "I'll put the kettle on." "Don't," Zoe stopped him. "First, we talk." They sat at the table, Zoe and Stacy on one side, Nicholas on the other, like at a negotiation. "You scared us," Zoe began. "That note in the garage. We thought you—" "I didn't mean to scare you," Nicholas said guiltily. "I just didn't know what else to do. Everything piled up, lost my job, Mom in the hospital, Marina with her threats." "Why didn't you tell me about the job?" Zoe asked. "I'm your wife, Nick. We could have figured it out together." "I was ashamed," he admitted. "I'm the breadwinner, the provider. And then the third layoff this year. They say it's the crisis, restructuring." "Mum works too," Stacy pointed out, "and earns well." "I know," Nicholas hung his head. "That's why it's doubly shameful. I couldn't provide for the family, shifted everything onto your shoulders and then decided to bring my mother here." Zoe tried to keep accusation out of her voice. "To rent out her apartment?" "Not only that," Nicholas flushed, and Mom really did need care, and Marina threatened to sell both apartments, hers and Mom's. "But Mom's apartment, that's your inheritance too," Zoe noted. "No." Nicholas shook his head. "Mom transferred it all to Marina 2 years ago. I only found out recently. Marina said she'd give me the money when she sold the apartment. Later. But I don't trust her. She's always been greedy." "And you decided it was better to bring Mom to us," Zoe summarized. "So Marina couldn't claim the apartment." "Yes," Nicholas admitted. "And I was afraid we couldn't handle the mortgage if I was out of work long. If we sold Mom's apartment, we could pay off the debt." "And did you ask me?" Zoe felt the wave of anger rising inside her again. "Did you ask Stacy?" "No, you just presented us with a fait accompli, demanded that your daughter give up her room, sleep on a fold-out bed, quit art school." "I was wrong," Nicholas said quietly. "Forgive me." "And you decided to take it out on a child?" Zoe wouldn't let up. "Deprive her of her future just because you found yourself in a tough spot?" "Mom," Stacy touched her hand. "Don't." Nicholas looked at his daughter with such pain and remorse that Zoe's heart clenched. "Stacy." He reached his hand across the table. "Forgive me, baby. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just confused, scared, didn't know what to do." "You could have talked to us." Stacy looked seriously at her father. "We could have figured something out together. I could have given private drawing lessons to kids or worked in a cafe on weekends." "Good Lord!" Nicholas covered his face with his hands. "What have I done?" Zoe was silent, looking at her husband. 15 years together, and they still hadn't learned to truly talk to each other, share problems, find solutions together. "Nick," she finally said, your mother's in the hospital. Marina says she wants to see me." "You?" Nicholas looked up. "Why?" "I don't know, but I plan to visit her after we sort things out here." "What's there to sort out?" Nicholas smiled bitterly. "I messed everything up. You left me, took Stacy, probably filed for divorce." "I didn't file for divorce," Zoe replied calmly. "You threatened divorce." "Me?" Nicholas looked at her in confusion. "I don't remember that." "You sent a message. I'm filing for divorce and don't think you'll get the apartment. It's mortgaged and you can't afford the payments." "Good Lord," Nicholas shook his head. "I was drunk, angry, talking nonsense." "So you don't want a divorce?" Zoe clarified. "Of course not," Nicholas exclaimed. "I love you, Zoe, and I love Stacy. You're my family. I don't want to lose you." Stacy looked at her mother, then at her father. A question hung in her eyes. "What do we do now?" Zoe asked after a long pause. "I don't know," Nicholas answered honestly. "I have no job, no money. Mum's in the hospital. The apartment's mortgaged." "Can we sell the dacha?" Stacy suggested. "We hardly ever go there anyway." "The dacha's in Grandma's name." Nicholas shook his head. "Mum's." "What about the car?" Stacy pressed on. "Wouldn't get much for it," Nicholas sighed. "And how would I get to work without a car, if I find any?" "We'll manage," Zoe said, surprising herself. "Together, we'll manage." "You?" Nicholas looked at her incredulously. "You're willing to come back?" "On one condition," Zoe said firmly. "Stacy doesn't give up her room to anyone, not even your mother. That's non-negotiable." "Agreed," Nicholas replied without hesitation. "We'll find another solution." "And one more thing," Zoe added. "No secrets, no lies. We discuss everything together and decide together as a family." "I promise." Nicholas stood up, walked around the table and knelt before his wife and daughter. "I swear to you I'll make it right. I'll find a job, take care of you, won't let you down again." Zoe silently looked at her husband, who seemed older, gaunt, with strands of grey in his hair. Did she still love him after all that had happened? She didn't know, but she was willing to try to start over. For Stacy, for their family, for herself, finally. "Get up." She offered her hand. "Let's go home, then to the hospital. We'll visit your mom together." County General Hospital looked like a typical Soviet-era medical facility, a grey 5-story building with peeling plaster and narrow windows. Inside, it smelled of bleach, medicine, and burnt porridge from the cafeteria. Zoe, Nicholas and Stacy walked slowly down the long corridor of the neurology department. The walls, painted a dull pale green, seemed to press down on their shoulders. Muffled groans, conversations, and the clatter of dishes came from behind the ward doors. Ward number 12. Nicholas stopped before a door at the end of the corridor. "Mum's here." He looked tense. After the talk at the dacha, they'd stopped home where Nicholas showered, shaved, and changed into clean clothes. Now he stood before his mother's ward door, nervously fiddling with a bouquet of carnations bought from a kiosk by the hospital entrance. "Maybe Stacy and I should wait here," Zoe suggested. "You talk to her alone first." "No." Nicholas shook his head. "You said Mom wants to see you, and besides, we agreed. We do everything together." Zoe nodded. They still had much to learn about family relationships, but they had to start now. Nicholas knocked softly and opened the door. "Mom, may I—" The cramped ward for 2 was dim. The blinds were drawn. Only a small lamp glowed over the second bed, where an elderly woman lay covered by a hospital blanket. The neighbouring bed was empty. Eleanor Victoria turned her head at the knock. Her face was gaunt. One side seemed frozen, immobile. Thin grey hair was tangled on the pillow. Only her eyes were alive, clear, looking intently and attentively. "Nicky." Her voice was weak but distinct. "Finally, forgive me, Mom." Nicholas approached the bed, bent down, awkwardly kissed his mother on the cheek. I couldn't come sooner." "I know." Eleanor Victoria smiled weakly with disobedient lips. "Marina told me everything. Is Zoe here?" Zoe stepped forward, feeling her stomach knot. 15 years of Cold War, 15 years of mutual dislike, and now they stood face to face in a hospital ward where, perhaps her mother-in-law would spend her last days. "Hello, Eleanor Victoria," she approached the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Lousy," the old woman answered honestly. "But the doctor says it could be worse, and who's that with you? Surely not Stacy." Stacy, who had been hiding behind her father, reluctantly stepped forward. "Hello, Grandma," she said quietly. "Goodness, how you've grown." Eleanor Victoria peered into her granddaughter's face as if seeing her for the first time. All grown up, beautiful. Stacy blinked in surprise. Grandma had never called her beautiful, only that girl, or, at best, Stace. "Sit down." Eleanor Victoria weakly waved her hand towards the chairs by the bed. "We need to talk." Nicholas pulled up 2 chairs for his wife and daughter. He remained standing. "Mom, you shouldn't get upset," he began. "The doctor said—" "Hush, Nick," his mother interrupted him. "I know what the doctor said. I'll live, but not like before. Left side barely works. Won't be able to walk. Can't take care of myself either." She turned her gaze to Zoe. "Marina said you left Nick because of me." Zoe didn't know what to answer. Tell the truth, that yes, she left because she refused to sacrifice her daughter's future for a mother-in-law who had always disliked her, or lie, soften the situation. "I didn't leave because of you," she finally said, "but because Nick and I couldn't agree, couldn't find a solution to the problem together." "A solution to the problem," Eleanor Victoria echoed. "And the problem is me, old, sick, useless." "Mom," Nicholas protested, "what are you saying?" "The truth." Eleanor Victoria tried to sit up on the pillow, but didn't have the strength. "All my life I was afraid to tell the truth, but now I will. You don't lie on your deathbed." "You're not dying," Zoe said gently. "The doctors say with proper care." "With proper care I'll torment you a little longer." Eleanor Victoria smiled wryly. "But who will care for me? Marina. She has work, a son. Nick. He has his own family." She paused, gathering strength. "Zoe," she finally said, looking her daughter-in-law straight in the eyes, "I need to apologize to you." Silence fell in the ward. You could hear the squeak of the nurse's cart delivering medication in the hallway, a car honking outside. "For what?" was all Zoe could squeeze out. "For everything," Eleanor Victoria replied simply. "For not accepting you as my own. For picking on you, for not loving Stacy the way I should have." She reached out her hand, the right healthy one, and found Stacy's palm. "Forgive me, child. I was a bad grandmother, a very bad one." Stacy looked at the old woman in confusion, not knowing what to say. All her conscious life, she'd felt Grandma's coldness, her dislike, and suddenly this confession. "It's okay," she finally said. "It's fine, Grandma." "It's not fine," Eleanor Victoria shook her head, "but it's too late to fix it now." "Mom," Nicholas sat on the edge of the bed. "Why? Why didn't you ever talk like this before?" "Because I was a fool," the old woman answered simply. "Proud, stubborn, a fool. Always wanted to prove something, first to your father, then to the whole world. Then, I don't even know to whom, and now here I lie paralyzed and think, why? Who did I prove anything to? Who is better off for my pride?" She coughed. Nicholas hurriedly handed her a glass of water from the bedside table. "You know, Nick," Eleanor Victoria continued after taking a sip, "when you brought me here, dumped me and left." "I didn't dump you," Nicholas protested. "I left the documents, my phone, said I'd be back." "Don't interrupt your mother," Eleanor Victoria said sternly. For a moment her old tone resurfaced. Anyway, when you left, I lay here alone and thought, that's it. I'm useless to anyone. My daughter took the apartment but doesn't want to care for me. My son quarreled with his wife because of me. My granddaughter can't stand me. What did I do to deserve this? She caught her breath, and then I realized what I'd done, how I'd treated people all my life, used everyone, made everyone dance to my tune, and so, at the end of my life, I got what I deserved, loneliness. Mom, you're not alone. Nicholas took her hand. You have us. We won't abandon you. I know, son. Eleanor Victoria smiled weakly. You're a good boy, too good for a mother like me. She turned to Zoe again. Don't leave him, she asked. He's a good man, just got confused. And don't take me in. We'll find another solution. What solution? Zoe involuntarily leaned forward. We'll sell my apartment, Eleanor Victoria said decisively. With that money, we can hire a home health aide and pay for a nursing home. What nursing home? Nicholas didn't understand. For the elderly and disabled, his mother explained. Golden Autumn, it's called. Out of town in the woods. I saw the ad on TV. They have care, treatment, company. Better than alone in an apartment or a burden in someone else's family. Mom, you're not a burden, Nicholas protested. I am, son, Eleanor Victoria objected gently, and I understand that. You have your own lives to live, your own problems to solve. My time is over. Now it's your turn. She looked at Stacy. Marina said you go to art school? Draw well? Yes, Stacy nodded. I'm applying to architecture college. That's right, Eleanor Victoria approved. My grandfather, by the way, was a good artist too. Painted icons for the church. Maybe you inherited his talent. Will you show me your drawings? Of course. Stacy smiled uncertainly. I can draw something for you, specially. Draw it. Eleanor Victoria closed her eyes for a moment. I'll hang it in my room at the home, brag to everyone about what a talented granddaughter I have. Someone knocked softly on the door. A nurse peeked in. Excuse me, but visiting hours are over. The patient needs rest. We're just leaving. Nicholas stood up. Mum, we'll come again tomorrow and discuss everything about the apartment and the home. Don't decide anything without us, okay? Okay, son. Eleanor Victoria weakly squeezed his hand. Zoe, you come too. And bring Stacy. Definitely, Zoe promised. Already at the door, she looked back. Eleanor Victoria lay with her head turned to the window, and in the dim light of the hospital lamp, her face looked like a wax mask, frozen in an expression of infinite weariness and resignation. Outside the hospital, Marina was waiting for them. She was smoking nervously, leaning against her new foreign car. Well, how is she? She asked, stubbing out her cigarette under her heel. Better than we could have expected, Nicholas replied. Talking, understands everything. The doctor came to see her, Marina reported. Said there's a chance for recovery, but she'll need serious rehab, massage, physical therapy, special procedures. Mom wants to go to a nursing home, Nicholas said. Golden Autumn, you know it. Do I ever, Marina grimaced. 30,000 a month. Expensive pleasure. We could sell her apartment, Zoe suggested. She said so herself. Sell it? Marina tensed. But it's... Yes, the apartment is in your name. Nicholas nodded. Mum told me everything, but she has lifetime occupancy rights, which means she decides what to do with it. We can't sell it without her consent, Marina muttered. And with her consent, Zoe looked intently at her sister-in-law. She consents, insists on it. Marina was silent, nervously fiddling with her car keys. If we sell the apartment, she began slowly, the money will go to Mom's care at the home. What's left? We split it equally, Nicholas said firmly, as the law dictates, half for you, half for me. But she gifted the apartment to me, Marina protested. Only to me. On the condition you'd take care of her, Nicholas reminded her, and instead you rented out her place and saved money for Dimka. Don't you understand? Marina raised her voice. Tony needs an education. He has a chance to get into a top university, and you with your… Marina, Zoe interrupted her calmly. Calm down. We're not saying Tony shouldn't have an education. We're saying you can't build your child's future at the expense of your mother's well-being. It's my apartment, Marina repeated stubbornly. On paper, it's mine. Then you take Mom in, Zoe said just as calmly. If you don't want to sell the apartment, then Mom's care at the home falls on your shoulders. 30,000 a month plus medicine, procedures, comes to 40 or 50,000 a month. Marina paled. I can't, my salary. Same with us, Nicholas nodded. I'm out of work. Zoe alone carries the mortgage. Where would we get money for Mom's home? But that's not fair, Marina exclaimed. Why should I sacrifice my son's future? And why should I have sacrificed my daughter's future? Zoe asked quietly. Why should Stacy have given up her room, slept on a fold-out bed, quit art school? Was that fair? Marina bit her lip, unable to find an answer. Let's not quarrel, Nicholas said conciliatorily. Let's sit down and calmly discuss all the options. Mom herself suggested selling the apartment, so she understands it's the most reasonable solution. Where will she live while the apartment is being sold? Marina asked. At least 2 weeks until she's discharged from the hospital. With us, Zoe said firmly, surprising herself. Temporarily, until the home issue is settled. But how? Stacy's room, Nicholas asked, confused. We'll put a fold-out bed in the living room, Zoe replied. For me, and Eleanor Victoria will be in our room temporarily. I can give Dad my room, Stacy unexpectedly offered. Really, Dad, you don't need much space, do you? And Grandma can be in your bedroom. Nicholas looked bewildered at his wife and daughter. It seemed he was only now beginning to understand how much they had risen above themselves, ready to compromise, to find solutions. Thank you, was all he could say. Well, that's settled, Zoe summed up. Eleanor Victoria will stay with us for now. Meanwhile, we'll start processing the papers to sell the apartment. Marina hesitated. I'll think about it. Talk to my lawyer. Such deals don't happen quickly. Of course, Zoe agreed. Everything needs to be done properly by the law. They said goodbye to Marina and walked to the bus stop. It was already dark outside. The streetlights were on. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of dampness and rotting leaves. Are you really ready to take Mom in? Nicholas asked quietly as they boarded the bus. After everything she said and did to you over the years. I don't know if I can forgive her, Zoe answered honestly. But I'm willing to try. For you, for Stacy, and maybe for myself. Stacy, sitting by the window, turned to her parents. You know, she said thoughtfully, I think Grandma really has changed, or maybe she's just showing who she really is for the first time. Maybe, Zoe agreed. Sometimes a person needs to be on the brink to understand what's truly important. The bus crawled slowly through the evening city streets. Ahead lay a return home. Temporary inconvenience with the mother-in-law living there, job hunting for Nicholas, selling the apartment, Stacy's college applications, a multitude of problems to solve. But for some reason, for the first time in a long while, Zoe felt a strange calm and confidence. They would manage it together.